Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the DCL podcast, your podcast to cruise a little smarter. I'm your host, Lake, and I'm joined by my co-host, Christy. Christy, how are you today?
I am well, Lake. How are you?
Doing pretty good. We are not alone for this episode. We are joined live by our Patreons because this is always a fun one. We are talking about itineraries.
It was not on my bingo card to have an itinerary release today. It was not. It was nowhere in my mind that I thought Tuesday. I mean, Disney does love to release something on a Tuesday, but there was nowhere in my mind that I thought this was happening today.
You know what? It happened on my day off, though, which
that was such good timing.
Kind of worked.
And I'm not on the Star of the Seas yet.
Yeah, which you will be tomorrow.
Exactly. And I would have been when they released it. Just a quick little 3-night cruise. So for the Patreons, and this will go live, so you can follow along in my stories at Peck Your Pixie Dust. I'll be posting about that cruise. But we're not here to talk about that. We have fall 2026 and spring 2027 itineraries to discuss. If you recall, last year, they released spring with it. And honestly, I didn't know we were going that route again to release the spring with the fall because frankly, I didn't feel like there was as many bookings as when, and hype is when they do it one season at a time. But realistically, they need to compete with other cruise lines that actually tell people when you can go on their cruise. So maybe that's what they're doing here.
Yeah, I thought when they did this last year, maybe they were slowly starting to push this like more and more into the future. But I mean, we saw really even last week that they had announced that the Australian itineraries, which would have fallen within this, were not happening. Of course, that obviously was a factor in changing this whole cruise plan. But as always, we are here to go over where each of these ships are going to be for this season, what's going on, what sailings we think are interesting, and what we think would be great choices to book. I mean, really, any Disney cruise is a great choice, but there's definitely a couple of highlights here.
Yeah, I think there's some that are going to be extra special or ones that are really going to garner a lot of excitement in the DCL community.
Yeah, so we have a couple ports for some of these ships that either we've never sailed to or it's been a very long time since we've sailed to, which I think is exciting. We always love to scream into the void about how we need new unique ports.
Which, if we're being honest, we don't have that many of, but we will take what little extras we can get today.
I think we should start with the stepchild.
The Wish?
No. Which one of these ships looks like the stepchild?
Who are we referring to?
The Adventure.
Oh, the Adventure. Yeah, that one is different. One of these things is not like the other.
It is not, and neither is its itineraries. I just think this is probably the quickest of the releases. It really only did half of a release. It only releases through the end of 2026.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that might mean that something different will happen for the Adventure in January? I was listening to the DCL webinar today, and they talked about how it's not far from Australia, for example. So maybe like their plan is for the new year to actually expand those cruises. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, I feel like you can only do 3 and 4 nights to nowhere for so long. Like eventually you're going to, even with repeat cruisers, cap that market. Like people are going to want to go somewhere, I feel like.
Yes. So that's it. Adventure's doing their same thing. They're very excited. You get 2 days at sea or 3 days at sea. Those prices are very reasonable. Obviously, the change is going to be getting out there. Okay. So, and actually, I think it's tricky because I had the Wish on the brain because the Wish is also a very simple one where there's not a whole lot happening until the end of the season. But maybe we'll talk about the end of the season on the Wish at the end of the show. So let's start with just what we know about the Wish so far.
Yeah. So pretty much for most of the release, I don't think the Wish is doing anything too crazy. You've got your 3-night and 4-night Bahamian sailings. It does actually for all the 3 nights, it is back to Castaway. Is that what I'm seeing here? I was looking to see if it had lookout days as well, which I thought was a nice refresh we saw in the last release. So for the 3 nights, it is all Castaway, but it looks like for the 4 nights, you do have some options for lookout. Also, a couple really sweet actually a good amount of 4 nights where you're doing lookout and castaway with the day at sea.
Yep.
Like that is kind of, for a short sailing, kind of a peak Disney Cruise Line itinerary there.
Yes, those would be top of my list if I was looking to pick a 4-night on the Wish cruise.
Yeah, otherwise, not a whole lot different going on for the Wish.
Nope.
Do we want to stick with Port Canaveral?
Yeah, Port Canaveral's tricky to just say we're sticking there. But the other one that is cruising there for the entire season, because we have some ins and outs out of that port of other ships. But the other ship that is staying there for the season is the Fantasy.
And the Treasure.
Oh, yeah. 7 nights out of the Treasure. I was just thinking of the shorter trips. So the Treasure we can go to next. She is sticking with her Eastern and Western 7-night switches. She does have some stops to San Juan instead of St. Thomas for a few cruises. And then I don't think she's doing anything else.
No, she's got really the 7-night switching back and forth. Yeah, other than a couple different port stops there that still aren't out of the usual, it is pretty much in line with what we see for the Treasure.
Yep.
And then moving into the Fantasy, also spending its time for this release in Port Canaveral. But this one's got the greatest diversity of sailings, a lot of 3, 4, 5 nights, really.
Yeah, I would say the West Coast sailings sort of hop around like that as well. But yeah, so the Fantasy is still doing her Bahamian cruises. So she has from October through January some sailings that are doing 5 nights going to Castaway and Cozumel. So that is something that is unique for her.
Yeah, she got quite a few Western Caribbeans in there, actually.
Yeah, and then there's right through that whole period for those months. And then she has the 3, 4, and 5-night Bahamian cruises going to Castaway, Lookout, and Nassau, like in between those ports, depending on the sailing.
I mean, nothing super really crazy for the Fantasy that we haven't seen before. I do, highlight those 5 nights that do Castaway and Lookout. Those are definitely a fan favorite sailing for sure. Nothing super crazy going on there, but just a really good sailing, especially if you're looking for like a first sailing as well. I really like that one. She
has quite a few 4 nights that also go and have a day at sea and then to Castaway and to Lookout, which is great. Then there is 3 sailings that are 5 nights doing 2 days at Castaway, 1 at Lookout, and then a day at sea. So that's exciting. Oh, yeah, that's 2 sailings doing that. And that sailing is really good for first-time cruisers, new cruisers, or cruisers with families, younger families, in my opinion, because it's so easy. And you're not trying to navigate a bunch of ports. You still get a really long cruise. Like a 5-night cruise is so fantastic. It is my favorite length for first-time cruisers because you can really relax and get into it. And then to be able to go to their islands, we'll call Lookout an island. It's just easier. Like it, and there's very low extra cost associated with it too, because you're at their islands where your food's included, your beach chair is included, you have towels, you have everything you need. You don't have to spend extra money if you don't want to, which I love.
Yeah, again, really just great itineraries, regardless of if you are new or returning sailings. Katie and I love a good back-to-back where we just float around.
And then with Port Canaveral, and I think it's almost easier to just stick with the port for one more second. The Dream does in April through May of 27 some cruises that go to Lookout, Castaway, and Lighthouse. So the Dream is back. So she's in San Juan for a tiny bit. And then
I'm sorry. I was looking at it the other way. Yes, she ends in Port Canaveral for this release. That was my problem.
Didn't want to believe me. I see.
No. Well, I was looking at the big block of Fort Lauderdale because the Dream will be returning to Fort Lauderdale after it does its transatlantic, which is on here. It's got a 13-night westbound transatlantic doing Vigo, Lisbon. Is that Funchal, Portugal? Yeah. So then it is in Fort Lauderdale for most of this release, doing kind of a rotation of various sailings. It's got some Eastern Caribbeans, which I think are pretty cool. I don't think we've seen Easterns from Fort Lauderdale before. Some 7-night sailings there, which are pretty cool. You've got
or we have her attending her going to the new port, which other ships are going to go to as well, but Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic. So that is going to be new, or at least returning after quite some time. I don't know if Disney has ever gone there. For sure, other cruise lines go there, but I can't think of a time that they had gone there. So Dominican Republic, that is interesting still, because some of those ports had been getting changed by other cruise lines recently. But good on Disney for giving us a new port. I mean, I did
Oh.
3 years.
Oh.
What did we just find out?
I just did not correlate with something we haven't discussed yet with the Dream coming back to Port Canaveral.
Are we going to save it to the end?
Well, we might as well just discuss it now because we've talked about both the ships.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and finish with the Dream. So first off, before the Dream goes to Port Canaveral, it does do some time in San Juan. It's got some Southern Caribbean sailings. One, I think, very good Southern Caribbean sailing, which I think is probably one of the best itineraries on this entire release.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the most popular itinerary. April 16th, 2027. She's doing a true Southern Caribbean, leaving from San Juan, going to Curacao, Aruba, Antigua, St. Martin, and 2 days at sea. I think that one is going to be a very popular sailing.
Yeah, definitely. Again, a really, really good Southern Caribbean sailings. We've had a lot of trip reports with various Southern Caribbean sailings, and they're all just always fantastic sounding and beautiful.
She's also doing 3, 4, and 5 night cruises out of Fort Lauderdale to Castaway, Lookout, and Nassau, depending on the itinerary. And I think that what's great about those options for people is if you're traveling in to take your cruise, you can now look to see which port might have better flights. The Dream is a great ship. The kid areas are great and the adult areas are great. And so it just has so much to offer people. And the port is so close to the airport there. You can also fly into Miami, which is still only about 45 minutes away from the port. So it's just super convenient. So it's definitely a cruise port. You're going to find that should be looked at, and you're going to find that your cruise fare is still slightly less expensive for the most part out of Fort Lauderdale than it is out of Port Canaveral.
Yeah. So then after San Juan, as we mentioned, it does go back to Port Canaveral, where it will be returning to 3 and 4 night sailings.
So it's taking the spot. Well, we only know that it's doing this in the spring, but April, May, but it's taking the spot of the Wish.
Yes. So the Wish does have basically some missing sailings at the end that coincide right with when the Dream gets back to Port Canaveral. So it looks like the Dream is taking over the Wish's spot, and the Wish is going to be moving somewhere.
She's okay. So many things, right? First of all, she's coming back. The Dream is coming back to Port Canaveral, which is how she got her start doing 3 and 4 night sailing. So many people have sailed her so many times because they would come and do 3 and 4 night sailings. So it's just hilarious that she's now full circle. But it also does lead to some questions. Now, to me, the April 27th date seems to imply that the Wish for 2027, and that's when we don't have any more sailings for the Wish, that the Wish is spending summer 2027 in Europe. And would she be due for a dry dock in 2027? That's 5 years, right? Didn't she come out in 22?
Yeah, she definitely could be up for the dry dock. This is such an interesting itinerary and decision, though. Again, this is us totally speculating.
Yeah, we have nothing. We know nothing. Somebody out there in the world knows things that we don't know, but she is missing. And then remember we talked about the 2027 Galveston getting their larger ship all the time. Well, we know that Galveston for part of the year is getting the earlier part of this release. The Magic is going there per usual, but the Magic's going to move on and they're going to have a year-long ship. The Wish has to come back from Europe. What if she comes back and goes to Galveston, which is where she now ports from? Again, we have no knowledge. But at some point in 2027, which is probably summer or fall, the next Wish class, Triton class ship is coming out. She likely needs to come back to Port Canaveral, and then the Wish can stay in Galveston.
Anyways, well, let's go ahead and circle back to the Magic then, since we discussed its time in Galveston a little bit. But before that, it actually starts its itinerary in Vancouver. This ship is kind of the one that's going to be all over for this launch. It's got the most different ports starting in Vancouver. It's got a repositioning cruise down into San Diego. Then it spends a little bit of the fall in San Diego doing a variety of sailings here. I think, is it mostly shorter sailings? We got 4 nights. Is it almost all 4 nights for
the Magic?
Magic, yeah. 4 nights.
Let me look.
Oh, it's got the 7 nights.
Yes,
7-night Mexican Riviera.
There's quite a lot of 7-night cruises now in general out of the West Coast. I think is the Magic doing them all? The Wonder will be doing some, I assume, as well.
The Magic does 1.
Okay.
And then the Wonder
the Wonder's doing
the
multiple.
rest.
Got it. So the Magic is doing the one over Halloween, but then the Wonder is doing the rest. And I think maybe for the Mexican cruises, it'd be easier to just, because the Magic and the Wonder are sort of flip-flopping and going back and forth, it would be easier to just cover the location versus the ship. But there are multiple itineraries, multiple sailings. There's going to basically be 2 ships there for a very long time, for a very long season. But then obviously the Magic is spending time in Galveston as well. And those cruises are over like the fall, winter area outside of the Panama Canal cruise, basically. And the Panama Canal cruises are the going in November and then April 25th. So returning in November and then going out April 25th. Those will be popular. They always are. That's a great itinerary. I guess the point, though, of that is she's in Galveston for the most part, except for like 2 days or whatever that she does like this random San Juan to Port Canaveral business. But she's in Galveston when she's not on the West Coast.
Yeah. And then she does the Panama Canal, goes back to San Diego real quick, and then back up to Vancouver, which does basically allude that both ships will be returning to Vancouver again.
That's great. I love that. I hope that eventually, we've talked about this before, but eventually we get those one-way sailings for Disney.
For Alaska?
Yes.
We can only hope.
Right?
Those would be amazing.
That's the next, I feel like, the natural progression of what should occur next, where Disney takes one of these ships and does a one-way with them.
That would be phenomenal. Yeah, so then Christy already pretty much covered the Wonder. It is staying on the West Coast permanently.
Yay!
At least for this release. It starts in Vancouver, goes down to San Diego, does that rotation of 4, 5, 6, 7-night sailings down there. We do have some sailings with Puerto Vallarta, which is not unseen, but a little bit rarer just because we haven't seen as many longer 7-night sailings there.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute, and it was going to Mazatlan for a minute when it was doing those 7 nights. So usually it'll hit Puerto Vallarta for the Panama Canal cruise. So I appreciate that it's just going to be a part of the 7-night Mexican Riviera cruises. Yeah, I love how many there's going to be.
Yeah, there's a good variety. Yeah. And then we also have some Catalina Island sailings returning as well.
I love Catalina Island.
Yeah, looks like there's actually a pretty good amount of those sailings as well, both for the Magic and the Wonder.
Yep, so that's great. Yeah, so I'm sorry the Fantasy is not going to the West Coast for those who wanted it, but you can have my ship. So I'm glad she's staying with me.
Yeah, and then did we actually talk about the Destiny?
We have not talked about the Destiny. So the Destiny is staying in Fort Lauderdale, but what is exciting is she has several 7-night cruises again. And I just think that's fabulous. I love the idea that there's going to be like a few sailings here and there that are going to get to have the alternate menus. And I feel like they're like over periods of fall breaks or other holidays for the most part, but not always. So she's mostly doing the 5-night cruises, but there are, like I said, this like several now 7-night cruises, which I just love.
Yeah, and they tend to be cheaper than the Treasure as well.
Ooh, have you looked at that?
I have not looked at the actual pricing for it, but typically...
Oh, but Fort Lauderdale, but they're so unique, so it's so hard to say. It is so hard. And, you know, newer ship or whatever, buy a little. So, yeah.
Yeah, but then that, I think, pretty much covers our Sailings. Again, seeing what happens to the Wish is probably like the big ooh and ah in our next release here. Also, if the Adventure is also looking to do something new, they are all TBD for the missing parts of this release. If the Adventure does something like different, I definitely could see that getting its own release though.
Oh, yeah. Like if it's like they did for Australia, if it's doing its own, what are those islands over there called? The Asian Pacific Islands or whatever. If it's going to end up in any of those, that is going to be crazy.
I hope though. I would love to see it.
It's a big ship though. So that'll be curious to see what size they can have. Also, I think I said that the Destiny is mostly doing 5 nights when it wasn't doing the 7, but there are 4-night sailings as well.
Yeah. Well, Christy, when can people book?
People can start booking on Monday, August 25th for our Pearl Castaway Club members. Platinum can book on Tuesday. Disney is going to mix things up at the end of that week. So Wednesday is Gold Castaway Club members and Thursday is Silver. Disney Vacation Club and Disney ABD Adventures or Insiders or whatever they call them, they can also book on Thursday. That has to be by phone. And so you can contact your travel agent if you're going to be booking on that day and you haven't previously sailed DCL before, and you just have to give them that information and DCL will confirm that you have in fact done one of those other activities, either RDVC or done another. And then it opens to the general public on Tuesday, which is obviously different, but we have Labor Day in there on Monday. So that would be the change for it being a long release. I guess I'm a little surprised that it's not Thursday. I mean, it's not Friday. They're not just going all the way in a row, but this gives people a little bit more time before it's open to the general public. If you have previously cruised before, remember that for the most part, the best pricing occurs on opening day. And if you're going to try to book one of those popular sailings like the 7-night Southern Caribbean, you should probably book that as soon as you can. It's probably going to be like one of those sailings like the typical Southerns that we've had where a lot of people book and then there is availability for it. But the problem is that now that price will have gone up and it is unlikely, unless at the very end, they're just trying to fill the ship, where the price can be reduced again. So you don't necessarily want to bank on that. Typically, your best prices are going to be to book on opening day. If you have a placeholder, you either have to book it with the travel agent that you booked it with or directly with Disney. A travel agent can't transfer over an old placeholder. It can only be transferred within 30 days of the booking, or it has to stick to either, like I said, that travel agent or to Disney to book it directly. And if somebody wants to work with me, Lake has created a Work with Christy link in the show notes that you can check out. You can reach me at Christy@packyourpixiedust.com. You can obviously contact your own travel agent as well to get your bookings done for you.
Christy, one more question.
Yeah.
What are you booking?
Oh, gosh. We haven't really talked about it yet, but I have to make some kind of decision because Monday is when I would book. But I really like taking a cruise over Christmas, and I find that I likely will do that again. We've already mentioned that briefly into our house. What are you going to book?
I'm not sure that we will book anything right away.
Yeah, you like to be a late booker.
We are late bookers.
Yeah.
There's still some sailings for 26 that we're looking at that we're like, that might be a rate sailing.
Yeah. And sometimes those exist. Like if you're going to go in off season, if you're going to go in the fall, there can be last minute guaranteed restricted rates that exist. But if there's something you have your heart on, I would say book it. Disney Cruise still allows you to cancel your bookings up until final payment unless you're in a concierge cabin. And then that you just have to move to a different sailing.
But I think what we are most interested in is trying to get our treasure sailing in.
Yeah, I think you do need to take that sailing.
Outside of the Adventure, that is the only ship we'll be missing.
I know. And I think my Adventure, I just don't think it's going to happen for me anytime soon. And so I think she's just going to be, do we get to because she's located so far, does she still count in the fleet? I mean, she does. Liz, who's cruising on the inaugural, is like, yes, she counts because I will then have cruised on her. So it'll be
she will be the true white whale.
She will be the
cruise line
and
fleet.
She's giant and so far away. So until they bring her to the States or something, she'll be the true white whale. Look at Liz just made a comment in the comments. Yes, she does count.
I will say that was actually the first sailings that we looked at the pricing for this release was what's the adventure up to? We were like, okay, like what's that price compare to once we look at flights? We said the thing that would probably do it for us is if ABD added a short escape.
Yes, that would be clutch. And I would say the only other thing about this sailing is there is no New York sailings this time, which I think we were hoping, some people were definitely hoping occurred. But I think that's going to do it for this episode.
All right, Christy, where can our listeners follow you?
You can find me all over the internet at Peck Your Pixie Dust. And if you want to work with me, check out the show notes for that link or contact me on my website or my email. And Lake, where can we find you?
You can follow me on Instagram and YouTube at MouseGen and follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at DCL Podcast. Or find out more information at dclpodcast.com. But that is going to do it for the show. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time on the DCL Podcast. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Well, that's going to wrap up the show. Once again, we want to thank you all so much for listening. If you're enjoying the show, we greatly appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'd also like to thank our Patreons who help make this show happen each and every week for us. You too can help support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/DCL Podcast. Whether you're boarding a cruise, enjoying a trip to the parks, or adventuring outside of Disney, on behalf of myself, Christy, and Steve, we want to wish you smooth sailing and safe travels. And we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.